In those days, judges used to listen little more patiently. so,
Correct. Yeah, I know
so
the
and for a junior like me, they were they were very very kind and considerate. Professing Hindutva is promoting culture, and it is not a corrupt practice or creating enmity or hatred between two classes or communities.
Friends, welcome to the Bombay Bar Association podcast, a show where we celebrate the rich history of the Bombay High Court through our members, past and present. I am Amit Desai, and today I have the pleasure of hosting one of India's most respected legal minds and the current Advocate General of Maharashtra, Dr. Milind Sathe, and a dear friend of mine. From leading the Bombay Bar Association as its president to now serving as the state's top legal advisor, Dr. Sathe brings a rare combination of courtroom experience and institutional leadership. Dr. Sathe, welcome to the podcast series of the Bombay Bar Association.
Thank you.
So, Doc, and sorry, I seem to know you for too many years. And interestingly, we passed out in 1982 from the Government Law College at the same time. Let me ask you about your present before we go down your journey into the past. In December of 2025, you became the Advocate General of Maharashtra, which is the first advocate of our state, as the Advocate General is known. So my first thought that comes to you, knowing the kind of person that you've been in the bar, in this highly politicized world in which we are living, with coalition governments, how has your experience been in balancing the primary interest of the state of Maharashtra over politics that plays a very deep part in our society today?
I would give answer to this question with what I said in my village. I was felicitated after being appointed as Advocate General, and in the village, they have not even heard of what Advocate General is. So someone explained to them that I'm Advocate General, first lawyer of the state for the state. So I told them that my job as an Advocate General is to not give advice to the state, but give right advice to the state. I continue to be lawyer. I now represent the state government, state of Maharashtra in the courts and advise them. So in balancing the conflicting interest in courts or giving advice, I keep that in mind that I have to give right advice. Ultimately, the decision, which are sometimes political decisions, they are taken on different perspective, they are taken on the different basis, etc. But the legal advice has to be the right advice, and that's what I think the role of an Advocate General is.
So, if I was to just take this thought of yours forward, and this is the tradition of our Bombay Bar over last so many decades, and the kind of Advocate Generals that Maharashtra has produced with absolutely impeccable integrity and acting in the interest of the state. We often read about, and this is again a question that comes about in the media and the perception of people today, that whilst we are officers of the court, and that's our primary duty, and when you rightly said that you give the right advice to the state, does the state invariably accept the advice is one part. And the second is when you walk into court, if they ask you to do something, which you argue something which is contrary to what you think is the right advice to the state, how do you as an Advocate General deal with situations like that?
Fortunately, those situations haven't arisen for me. As far as arguing in court is concerned, I have been doing matters for the state for last 25 years. But they were one-off cases, some important cases in which they wanted me to appear for the state government. It were those kind of cases. So I have experience of dealing with government in handling their cases. And some of them were high-profile cases like Coastal Road. I defended it for the state government. So I have been doing firefighting job also for government without being an officer, without being a government leader or holding any post in the government. So I have done that job also. So that issue hasn't arisen. And I think if that issue does arise, I would continue to say that my first duty is to the court as a as an officer of the court. And as I said earlier, that it's a right advice I have to give. So therefore, I would argue and I will argue, I have been arguing whatever is the correct case, correct law in that particular case. That's what the court expects from any lawyer, including the Advocate General. In this case, it happens that the Advocate General is representing the state. Of course, there will be conflicting issues, conflicting interests, and you have to balance those interests in the court. So, in that case, you have to make that delicate balance struck with the court, with the conflicting interests, the other side, and the state interest. But ultimately, the state interest in a public interest manner, in a public interest way, it has to be considered in that context and that perspective.
I think I know why the government chose you to be the Advocate General. I think these are the true traditions of an Advocate General's office, and I'm glad that that's something that we continue to uphold. So moving on to something else, because is that, you spent, nearly about 44 years in the profession,
right? Yeah, that's
right? So in this journey of yours, tell me, what has been your kind of proudest moment in your career? I mean, what is the appearance before the full bench of the Bombay Accord within, I think, 2 years of joining the profession, which is something which is very, very unusual, and you were probably very lucky to get that opportunity.
That is correct.
Yeah, so tell us, what is it? If there's anything else, also please tell us if there's anything else.
I would say the proudest moment I would recall and recount happened in less than 2 months of my joining the bar. I joined the chambers of D.R. Dhanuka, who later became the judge of the High Court. And when I joined, in a week's time, a historical trial began in Bombay High Court before Justice S.P. Bharucha. It was an issue relating to management of a company, and it was a fight between the company and the financial institutions who had floated for the first time in India convertible debentures. So those convertible debentures would become eventually shares, and the promoter's shareholding would drop. So that is what the dispute was. And if I tell you that those names who were appearing in that case, they were the galaxy at that point of time. Some of the young generation lawyers may not even have heard their names. So the plaintiff's team was led by Mr. K.S. Cooper, G.A. Thakker, Ashok Modi, Suresh Parekh, and Vasant Kotwal, who is now a senior, was the junior counsel in that matter. And I was on the defendant side because Dhanuka was there. So defendant side was led by Mr. Fali Nariman. He was assisted by Ramakant Bhatt, Ashok Desai, Temton Andyarujina, my senior D.R. Dhanuka, and Rafiq Dada and Gulam Vahanvati were the junior counsel in that matter. So while that case was going on, there was some hotly debated issue about admissibility of some document. And both sides, Mr. Cooper on behalf of plaintiffs and Nariman on behalf of defendants, they were arguing something. And there was some issue about constructive notice. So they were citing judgments, and Dhanuka looked at me and asked me to find something. So I went to library, found out something in Stroud's Judicial Dictionary, brought that, gave it to Mr. Dhanuka. Dhanuka read it and handed it over to Nariman while he was arguing the matter. He cited it before Justice Bharucha. And that's where that great moment of pride happened. Nariman cited that dictionary before the judge, and he acknowledged it to me with my name. There was no introduction. He had no reason to know me personally or know my name. I was not formally introduced. But that was something like, if I can use that word, high for a junior lawyer of 2 months. That was something very, very special.
That's lovely, and I think that's a quality that I have personally experienced with Fali also.
Absolutely.
I think Mr. Nariman, when I was actually doing the Escorts versus LIC battle, and I was representing the Life Insurance Corporation, that very celebrated decision. So when the matter moved into the Supreme Court, and Mr. Nariman was actually, introducing the entire legal team. So I was sitting in the third row at the Supreme Court in courtroom number 3, right at the back, as a young junior in those days. But he made it a point not to exclude any junior. He pointed out to said that's Mr. Amit Desai sitting right at the back, and he gave a letter. So that was, I think, the quality of amazing quality of Mr. Nariman, which we've seen in those days. So that's interesting.
Another thing I can say is about the full bench you mentioned.
That's correct, sir.
I was 2-year-old, and nobody would brief a 2-year-old to argue a matter before a full bench. There was an issue under Rent Act whether a statutory tenant's licensee is protected or not under the old Bombay Rent Act. and there was a conflict of decisions between two benches. So the matter was referred to full bench, and the full bench was headed by Chief Justice Konda Madhav Reddy. He was the first Chief Justice from outside the state under the new policy of having Chief Justice from outside the state. And the other two judges were Justice Gadge and Justice Pratap. And my opponent was Sarosh Kapadia, who later became Chief Justice of India.
Wow.
And the case involved a landlord who was receiving rent of 1 rupee per month from the tenement which was in dispute. And neither the lawyer nor the client could afford anybody to pay any fees. And K.R. Dhanuka, my senior's brother, was the advocate on record. So he asked me, and I gladly accepted that. And it was a very, very exciting challenge to argue before a full bench. And the bench appreciated my arguments, and I succeeded in that matter. Unfortunately, that judgment was overturned in less than 6 months by Supreme Court. That's that part.
But let me put it, probably for the larger good of everybody, fortunately. Because ultimately we respect that the final authority to decide the law of the country is up there.
True.
But yes, I think it's a great opportunity which is very rarely made available to youngsters at that stage in their career. And I think that's a great opportunity. That's I think the charm of our Bombay Bar and the chambers in which we actually grow up.
Absolutely.
And actually that takes me to the next thought that comes to my mind is that, we in the Bombay Bar, when juniors talk about the chambers in which they've worked, they talk about them as chambers of our seniors. But somewhere along the way, I've sensed and noticed that insofar as you are concerned, you used to describe your chamber where you grew up, and that chamber was a chamber which had produced a prolific number of judges of the Bombay High Court. You described that chamber as a Gurukul.
That is correct.
So I would be curious as to why you described that chamber as a Gurukul when, the normal practices, they say, I was with this senior and all that. So if you could share your journey there a little bit. And there's obviously a very subtle but important distinction between just being in a chamber of a senior and a Gurukul.
My senior, as I mentioned, was D.R. Dhanuka. And I was introduced to him by one lawyer practicing on appellate side, Mr. M.D. Angal. And Dhanuka ji used to call him as Angel. So he indeed was an angel for me, who introduced me to Dhanuka. Dhanuka was a very, very academic-oriented person. He was a professor and teacher by heart, and he would teach all his juniors while in conferences, while reading the briefs, while discussions, etc. So he was a true teacher. In fact, jocularly, we used to all call him Masterji. And I have counted the number of juniors he has produced. So Justice Junjunwala, Satyanarayanji Junjunwala, who later became the judge of High Court, he was the first junior of D.R. Dhanuka. Of course, junior in the sense they were kind of contemporary. They used to travel together from Malad, so that's how we counted him as first junior. And I counted myself as 25th junior of Justice D.R. Dhanuka. Then he continued and a few more juniors till he became judge. But he was absolutely a teacher-like person, and he would ensure that everybody is thoroughly prepared in every single case which he is handling, etc. I tell you some first instance where I was briefed by some third-party solicitor, not with Dhanuka but independently. And that was a matter before Justice Rege and Justice Lentin. And I was supposed to assist J.C. Bhatt, senior advocate. So I told Dhanuka that I have been briefed in a matter. So he asked me about the matter. And I was excited, and he became nervous because J.C. Bhatt had mercurial temper and everybody had faced brunt of that. So he was more worried about me than my excitement. So what he did was something unbelievable. He said, "When is the conference?" I said, "It's on Monday." So it was on Friday evening. So he said, "Give me the brief." He read the brief on Friday. He explained to me what the case was, what to research, where to research, what to look up, etc. He made me ready in that matter, and he said, "Now you go and brief J.C. Bhatt." That was the kind of senior he was. Nobody could make such gesture. Nobody could have done something like that. And that's the greatness of that man, which we all his juniors, we acknowledge. And that is why I always call his chambers as Gurukul, because everybody has learned, and everybody has learned values, ethics from him, of his chambers, apart from law.
And I think you're right. I mean, so for a senior to actually do what he did truly describes this place as a Gurukul.
Absolutely.
And I think in the world in which we live today, in the fast-paced world, I think it's very difficult to find.
Absolutely.
So taking this through to your next kind of phase in your life, which matter do you believe was your real breakthrough moment in your career? I mean, you've done many, but I don't know whether it's
no. I would say that the full bench matter, because that's
That
where
became-
I argued myself.
Correct.
And it was argued for about 4 days before a full bench. And in those days, judges used to listen little more patiently. So,
Correct. Yeah. I
so
know the-
and for a junior like me, they were they were very, very kind and considerate. I remember Justice Pratap used to have heated arguments with Saroj Kapadia, because Saroj Kapadia was a seasoned lawyer by then. But that, I think, was a very, very important moment for me, because that's where I was seen and I was known to have argued something before a full bench. And in those days, there were no photocopying. There used to be, if you remember, there used to be cyclostyle.
Cyclostyling, correct.
So this judgment was cyclostyle and circulated, because it was very important judgment for rent act practitioners in small causes court and in the high court who did rent act matters. So that judgment was circulated, and then whenever somebody would practicing from rent act would look at me, he said, "Oh, I did this matter." So that was really a moment of pride for me, and I would say that was a breakthrough moment.
But did that inspire Mr. Prabhu, whose election petition, because after
Yes.
that you did many an election petition,
Yes.
sort of was inspired to come and sort of brief you, because that was in those days, I think it was about 1987 or 88,
87, yes.
where he fought his election on the plank of Hindutva, which is probably the first at that point of time. And then he had a serious problem in the courts, and you were then called upon to try and defend.
That was the
yeah, so-
first. That was the first election petition. I think BJP and Shiv Sena combined fought together on the plank of Hindutva. It was Vile Parle constituency by-election, and Prabhakar Kunte was his opponent, who was defeated, who filed the election petition. And Mr. Bobde, Arvind Bobde, used to appear for Prabhakar Kunte. And my team, I did major work like cross-examination, etc. Mr. C.J. Sawant, who later became Advocate General, who was also involved in that matter, he did substantial work. I used to do a lot of work for cross-examination, etc. In that, the issue was whether Hindutva amounts to practicing or professing Hindutva amounts to corrupt practice under the Representation of People Act. The argument was raised that Hindutva is a way of life and is protected by Article 29 of the Constitution of India. This trial was conducted before Justice Bharucha in courtroom number 46. And Justice Bharucha very, very meticulously conducted that trial. And I must say that the judgment of Justice Bharucha upheld his contention that professing Hindutva is promoting culture, and it is not a corrupt practice or creating enmity or hatred between two classes or communities. But eventually he set aside the election, holding that what your leader spoke was not promoting culture. So he accepted in principle the issue that Hindutva is culture, and promoting Hindutva as a culture is not hatred or enmity. That judgment eventually went to Supreme Court and Chief Justice Verma's judgment. Because from 87 onwards, the next elections were in 1991 for Assembly.
Correct.
And those elections were also fought on this campaign, and there were some 10, 15 election petitions filed in Mumbai, and they eventually went to Supreme Court.
So you then for some time became an expert on
I did
election law.
I did lot of election petitions before Justice Variava, before Justice Suresh, before Justice Agarwal.
Yeah. But I don't know whether we today see as many to be able to and get the opportunity for cross-examination and conducting of trials before the Bombay High Court. And I think that's something that I think the
Very, very
youngsters-
rare thing, yeah.
the youngsters are actually missing out on some of that. So do you want to share some of your experiences as a trial lawyer in the Bombay High Court on the original side?
Cross-examination actually puts you to test.
Yes.
And there are like I have listened to various lectures of the legendary Jethmalani on cross-examination and various other speakers in Bar Council lecture series, etc. And they used to always say that in cross-examination, never ever ask a question of which you do not know the answer, and then you are getting into yourself into a big problem. So that was something. Those election trials were very, very interesting experience.
But this takes you back. But we were fortunate in those years, possibly in the Bombay High Court, because on the criminal law side, when of course the trials got over, in the original jurisdiction of the Bombay High Court for criminal trials, of course, went away decade before that. But I think we had the Antule trial, which got transferred from the Sessions Court to
And then
the High
resent
Court,
back.
and then resent back. But for the period when
There was,
Justice
right.
Khatri was conducting the trial, and therefore it was a great opportunity for practitioners on the criminal side. But I think the biggest opportunity for practitioners on the criminal law side was, of course, when the security scam broke, and then all criminal trials just moved into the High Court. And that was a rare opportunity for a lot of lawyers to practice and do trials before Justice Varyava, with all his experience, also there. And then Justice Sarosh Kapadia was also conducting the trials in that. So yeah, I think that phase, which I think lawyers at the bar enjoyed, was something which was exceptional.
Post 1992,
1990,
Justice Varyava became special court, and then incidentally he had both civil as well as criminal trials.
correct.
So that was a opening for a lot of lawyers for
correct.
getting into the trial practice.
Yeah, but I think that opportunity is something that needs to be given to the youngsters today, and that's something that I think needs to be done. So moving on to a different part of your multifarious kind of legal practice that you've had. And you've also done a lot of public interest litigations and all, and which have had a lot of social impact. So in your experience and your belief, which of your cases you believe is one which has had the maximum social impact? Because you've been not just appearing either for a PIL petitioner or for respondent, but you've often been appointed as amicus curiae by the court, which is like a friend of the court, to assist the court in these kind of matters to evolve and come to the right decision. So I was just curious as to when you saw yourself as a lawyer doing this kind of social work, in a sense, which one of your matters you think has had a significant impact, and what would that impact be for the city?
Social work, I would say I inherited from Dhanuka chambers, because Dhanuka used to do a lot of social work, not only in court as a free free work, but also outside the court, also in society. He was associated with that Rajasthani Sammelan, Marwadi Sammelan, lots of colleges they used to run, and lot of charity work he used to do. So that was the inspiration and legacy for me also. My father also used to. My father was a teacher. He also used to do a lot of.
Wasn't that Rajasthan Sammelan the one which used to have all those Rajasthani food at the CCI?
That's right.
Right?
That is true.
That's
that is
my
true. That is
limited
true.
benefit from that. Yes, that's correct.
That is true. So I would say that legacy has legacies from my father as well as from my senior. The impact of the cases which I did, I would say that whenever I was defending something like public projects, I have done large number of cases defending the public projects which were challenged in PILs, etc., on the grounds of environment assessment or CRZ, which is also part of environment, or alignment, etc. So all those cases, I would say the impact is like when those projects are done, the impact is on the society when those projects give the fruit to the society. But on personal level, I would recall few cases. I did one case for the project affected persons of Surya Dam and the distribution of water. Surya Dam is in Palghar district. So there were large number of issues about distribution of water, resettlement of the project affected persons, etc. I did case for them, and eventually that matter resulted in proper distribution of Surya river water to various villages in Palghar Taluka, resettlement of those projects. I would say that's something which gives you satisfaction. You see, your commercial cases, it really doesn't matter much because it's a balance sheet point eventually for the entity. But these are the matters which really give you satisfaction because there is a smile on somebody's face. That's like $1 million smile. That is a priceless smile you see on that person. I have done few cases for these retired employees, and I must say this, that I have not taken any fee any time from students as well as these cases, service matters, for whom I have done. Of course, now there are not many cases in High Court. They go to the tribunals, etc. But I did one case for the pension from the employees of Labour Board. They were transferred from Labour Department to Labour Board and they were not eligible for pension. So I did the case for them, and there were 30 employees who had not got this pension. So those old people used to come to High Court and literally cry that because they have no pension, no money, they are not respected in their families, etc. So Justice Ajit Shah delivered that judgment. They got the pension. So the smile on their face was something worth doing those cases. So these are the moments which you actually cherish. Apart from your successes in the commercial matters, of course, they are important. They also lay down law, but these are really priceless moments.
And I think that is the need of the hour, because in the journey of any lawyer, I mean, it's one thing to, of course, say that I come into this profession, it gives me a career, it gives me economic benefit. But I
that
think
is also important.
But the real satisfaction comes out from these kind of cases, which also tell you that this is how you can, as a lawyer, contribute to the.
No, I would say that you come here to do social work. That would be hypocrite. But
that's not social work. I think it's a satisfaction to get about the outcome of these decisions.
So you need to.
When you talk about justice,
that is.
I mean, this is where you see that justice is actually, being meted out to the people who deserve it. I think that's important.
No, I would say you need to strike a balance between doing your cases for it's your vocation ultimately. That you can't say that you are here to do charities, etc. But at the same time, whatever you can do is equally important, and everybody must do it.
The question that I'm going to which comes to my mind in the light of all the PILs that you've done, and now maybe you can tell me from your perspective or experience, is that we've always seen, of course, that this whole jurisprudence has also got misused at times. So there is a concern amongst the governments, of course, to say that maybe the PIL petitions which are now coming into the court
are being misused,
and therefore it's impacting economic development. So time is coming where the court should now not have this jurisprudence because this was jurisprudence unique to India. So I don't know whether you have a view on that sort of thought. I'm not saying that is a decision, it's a thought which is probably being felt within the system and the government at some point.
I think if we look at it from the historical background, when the PIL evolved post-emergency era from 77, you will see the large number of judgments in PILs from 77 to 1990 in respect of personal liberty matters, bonded labor, women prisoners, etc.
Bhagalpur blinding.
Right. So those cases, they really helped evolve the society. And the PIL was really and truly a solution for those problems. Over a period of time, then post-90s, as you will remember, that the PIL faced change into politics or a little bit more in environment. CRZ, Environment Impact Assessment, Forest, Godavarman series of cases, etc. But then when it came into the politics, like rectitude in public life issues, Jain Hawala case, etc. started, then PIL started getting misused. And therefore today, several judges look at it with clear skepticism. And therefore, even if there is there are one or two genuine PILs, they get maligned and branded as a paisa income litigation, as Justice Pasayat had put it. So therefore, skepticism is justified, but at the same time, you can't paint everybody with the same brush, and therefore, courts do strike that balance in finding out which would be a genuine PIL and which need to be nipped in the bud at the initial stages itself. I think that's being done by the courts.
But I think you would agree that it should be left to the discretion of the court whether to entertain or not to entertain, rather than to just take away the jurisprudence entirely. So again, since you're such a multifaceted person, a different phase of your character. So I've always known you, and you're one of those rare lawyers who is also a humorist. You love humor. You're always in that frame of mind where you can, if you get an opportunity, you'll sort of crack a joke, etc. And you have a large repertoire of, many funny and witty stories. So I don't know whether you would like to share any of such funny or witty stories of your professional journey, which come to your mind, and tell us something about it.
I think this part of humor, I started liking it because as a child, I had read 6 volumes of autobiography of Acharya Atre in Marathi. It's called Karece Pani. 6 volumes.
Yeah.
And he was one of the most versatile person Maharashtra has ever seen. He was a politician, he was a counselor in Pune, he was a teacher, he was a member of Legislative Assembly, he was a playwright, he was a cinema producer, and after all, a great humorist. And I was really impressed, and I even quote even today from his books, etc. So he had written one of the books on the Vidhimandal and Vidhimandal and Vinod, like legislature and humor. And in that, there are large number of instances, which is one of them was on Thursday afternoon when everybody is almost drowsy. Minister of Ports is discussing something. So one mischievous member stands up and says, "What is government doing about development of Mahabaleshwar Port?" Minister, without blinking, says the question is under consideration of government. I said that's a very useful line to use for anything. The subject is under active consideration.
It's
And of course, if you keep little the atmosphere and climate in court, it helps.
it helps, yeah. But how often do you sort of use it as part of your advocacy?
It depends. It depends on the case. It depends on the judges.
But do you in considering the kind of pressure that our judiciary has today and the judges have
It's
today,
very rare. It's very rare,
not
but
rare,
it's
I
very
think,
rare. But
how-
sometimes some judges do indulge
indulge a
you
little
or
bit of a
indulge
little,
themselves in
yeah.
this kind of reporting.
Yeah, that remind me of a matter I did just yesterday before a session judge, and that it was the entire environment. It was an anticipatory bail, two big parties warring on each other, and the whole crowd, and it was just going on intensely. And at some point of time, I cracked a little joke when my opponent, and I don't want everybody knows, but it got a little sort of this thing. So I said, "Listen, once in a while, we are allowed to lighten the mood in the court because it's just too stressful." But yeah,
I remember before Justice S.K. Desai, I was doing some octroi matter for paper mill. And the question was that our representations were not considered. So he asked me a question that, did you make representations? So I told him, showed him a letter, which was some 2 years back before the petition was filed. And with poker face, he asked me a question. You must not have written any more letter thereafter because you must be short of paper. It took me 10 seconds to understand what he was saying because it was paper mill.
That's correct. So that is a thing. So again, another phase of your life, leadership. So let's spend a couple of minutes talking about your leadership elements in your career, because you have been the secretary of the Bombay Bar Association, I think, in 1996, so sort of 10 years, 12 years after you joined the practice, and then went on to become the president of the Bombay Bar. Are there any kind of initiatives or anything that you would like to share with us during your period, which you may have sort of completed or you might have initiated, which actually sort of helped the Bar Association in some way?
I would, for that, start from 86. In 1986, I became the honorary secretary of the High Court Library.
I see.
Justice Sujata Manohar used to be the chairperson of the library committee. And we did a lot of reforms in the library, starting with prohibiting smoking in the library. You can't imagine that while studying your cases and law books, etc., somebody next to you used to smoke.
So you all were ahead of the times, because prohibition on smoking in public places came in as a
Much
matter
later,
of legislation
in
much later.
2003. And
Yeah, exactly. So you all were ahead
so
of the
we
time.
prohibited smoking in the library in 1986.
Right.
Then High Court Law Library had large number of rare books like Dharma Shastra by Dr. Kani, Bharat Ratna Kani, So in 86, there was no photocopying or digital system. So in those days, if you remember, even your registered documents for record purposes, they used to go to Pune for microfilming.
Correct.
They used to have like negatives of the films prepared, and your document would be available only after 2 years. So we had planned a project to get these rare books translated into digital on the negative, like microfilming. So we started that. We did that exercise for some books, but it was very, very expensive. So we couldn't complete the entire project. That was while I was the library secretary. As the secretary of the Bombay Bar Association, Mr. Chagla was the president at that point of time. Before that, there was that incident in the Bombay High Court about complaint against 4 or 5 judges. There were a lot of meetings held, etc. So I used to be part of that as a member of the Bombay Bar Association Standing Committee. So that helped me as a secretary. And of course, during my 7 years as a president, and I must say why I did seventh year, because my term expired. We are entitled to do 2 terms of 3 years, which I did. My term expired during COVID, and therefore the elections could not be held, and that's why I continued, not for any other reason. So during those 7 years, we did. My team included Nitin Nitin Thakker as vice president, and Dr. Biren Saraf as the honorary secretary, which was a very, very great team. In addition to our committee members, we did large number of things. We started the workshops for junior lawyers. Almost every alternate Saturday, we used to have a workshop on a subject as a continuing legal education for junior lawyers. We would invite a senior, a judge, etc., to discuss a particular topic, and we continued that almost for 5, 6 years. That was, I think, a great initiative. It helped a lot of lawyers. We used to organize other functions also on behalf of Bombay Bar Association. Then, of course, we had 1 or 2 incidents about involvement and issues relating to judges and Chief Justice, and we had to take a call in moving a resolution, putting our stand on record, etc. So that becomes little critical, because as a bar leader, you need to decide what stand to take, which will not disturb the system. At the same time, you need to register something so that in future something has not gone unnoticed, something wrong has not been pardoned, in the sense without getting notice, etc. So these becomes little critical and crucial calls. So that's what we did. But I had a great team. Then we also celebrated 150 years of our recorded history. And I say it recorded history because we have found out with some evidence that the Bombay Bar Association was established on 8th of May 1824, the day on which the Supreme Court of Bombay was established. And it was established with 4 lawyers and 2 judges.
Yeah.
And there is a recorded history of that. The first case was called out on Monday. This court was established on 8th, which was Sunday. The first case was called out on Monday, and the Advocate General, he claimed that he has a precedence over other lawyers. That case was decided first. That issue was decided first, and it was decided Advocate General has the precedence. And that's how he became the leader of the bar of 4 members to begin with. Wow. That's where the Bombay Bar began. And that tradition of Advocate General being the leader of the bar, that is president of the Bombay Bar Association, continued till 1973, almost for 150 years, when Mr. Sirvai was the last president and Advocate General. After that, it incidentally happened that the advocates general appointed were not members of Bombay Bar Association, so that tradition discontinued. So that was a great phase of Bombay Bar Association, of course, apart from being a member, as a secretary, as a president. But I had a great team to work, and we did that great function of sesquicentenary of recorded history.
But you know what you just told me is very interesting, because if you have now got evidence that the Bar Association was actually incorporated in 1824 on 8th of May, then we are effectively saying that in 2024, that just 2 years ago,
we completed 200 years.
Completed 200 years.
Yes.
And I think then the Bombay Bar Association should be doing something about it. 200 years is something which is very, very significant. We are in our 202nd year today on the 8th of May. So, I mean, very, very interesting nugget that you've shared today, so which I did not know. There are a couple of other facets about your journey which I think are important. One is your life as an author. I have stumbled upon two occasions when you've been an author. One is your essay on the Gurukul, which I think is more like a little booklet and not just an essay
On my senior.
on your senior and the
Yes,
chamber. And
yes,
I had occasion to sort of read it because I was doing some research, and I find that how meticulously and thoroughly you've described Bhupen Chambers and Dalal Street, which we all grew up with all the little knickknacks around there and the food stalls and everything that you've sort of, so very observant. And then you decided to write a book called The Kaleidoscope, right? And that book of The Kaleidoscope is really the humorous side of you, where you've written about all the funny and witty stories which you sort of probably observed in your life in different situations. I don't know whether you've written anything else, which if you have, then please do share with me. But when I sort of thought about that part of it, and I was very intrigued about the way you chose the topic of that book. So I did feel the need to describe your journey as a kaleidoscope, because I think that's where I see different patterns of your journey. So, whether it's leadership, whether it's authorship, whether it's pro bono, whether, very different aspects of your life. And so I did want to talk to you about a little bit about that. But before I do that, I just have to sort of, you have to give me a moment on something which I want to share with you. So this is something which is, this is what you stand for.
Absolutely.
Right? I thought I should.
It is kaleidoscope.
And I think with that kaleidoscope which you've used in your life,
is something.
it's about, tells you different facets of life that you've gone through. So tell us something about that part of that journey when you became an author and you wrote, and I don't know what else you've written.
I'll just mention a few things about kaleidoscope. In my,
you don't want to see the patterns that it creates. I don't know whether they relate to any of your journeys of your life.
I remember in my 5th standard, we used to have in our district science fairs.
Correct.
And I had prepared a kaleidoscope with 3 broken pieces of glass, tied them together, covered with a newspaper, and some pieces of broken glass bangles. Correct. And then you see them from one side, and you turn and you see the pattern. Like the moment you turn, it's a different scenario, etc. So that's the kaleidoscope, and life is like that. Correct. Every moment is different. That's the idea of kaleidoscope. As far as writing is concerned, I was very fond of writing. Even in my school days, I used to write essays, and teachers used to appreciate those essays. I have been writing in Marathi. You will remember this, perhaps there is a culture of Diwali magazines. Yeah. During Diwali, there are a large number of publications which are known as Diwali Ank, correct, which are published, and I used to write in those. Okay. And I never wrote the stories. I wrote something humorous, something sarcastic, so it was like different kind of writing, because I think my inspiration was George Orwell. I was really fascinated with his 2 books, 1984 and Animal Farm, and I can recite few passages from those books even today. That's how thoroughly I have read those books to begin with. So I used to like that kind of writing. I used to write those, and this book is actually a collection of stories I have written over a period of time. Okay. And as you have seen that book is collection of stories of humorous way of writing Constitution of Mumbai, Constitution of Kolkata, Constitution of Ahmedabad, New Delhi. They're humorous constitutions. Yes. Then, of course, there are stories of what would happen if Gandhiji and Nehru visit India today. So I have narrated few stories in that book. So that's the kind of book it is. And I must mention that journalism was one of my options for a career. In fact, I did journalism from KC Law College while I started practicing law. Of course, in the evening I used to get free because Dhanuka never asked us to be detained till late evenings, etc. So I had free evenings. So I used to go to KC College of Journalism. I did 1 year journalistic course, and then I had to do 1 month internship as a journalist. So that's how I stumbled in Delhi. Karanjia's newspaper. There I met Manik Dawa, who was the chief reporter there. So he said that why don't you report the court cases? So that will be your training as a journalist. So I did that. So that was an interesting experience. So writing was my passion because journalism was my possible career option. Civil services was my another possible option. And I'm glad that I did not.
So you have to also tell us whether you're glad that you didn't become a journalist. I don't.
No, I'm very glad that I became a lawyer. Because I always tell people that, I was the last batch of 11th pattern.
Yeah.
The following batch was 10 plus 2. So when I passed my 11th and went to college, science stream, I passed my inter science. And the batch following me passed 12th standard. So we were competing for same number of seats in engineering and medical colleges. And there were some 5 medical colleges and 5-6 engineering colleges in Maharashtra. And 2 batches were competing for those same number of seats. I think today there would have been agitations about it. How could you do such a thing?
You'll have a petition.
And I did not get admission to engineering college. So I did my BSc. And then I ended up doing law. And I always tell these people, I said, glad that I did not become engineer, because if I had become engineer, then you have to do some masters in business management, something like that, MBA, etc. You do that. Then you join some corporate and climb the ladder there, and then go to lawyers to brief them.
That's true. That's very true. So you're happier you're where you are. So you began your journey from what was then a small little village called Chiplun in southern Maharashtra, which I think now can hardly be called small, because I think it's
Western
now Western Maharashtra, and now it's now a holiday destination for wealthy and famous. So do you want to share your story as to how you started your life? Because I remember you was a little village, and then from a village you've sort of come to Bombay, but your education there, etc.
So Chiplun is actually a taluka place. Ratnagiri is the district, and I hail from a village called Malgar, which is 20 kilometers away from Chiplun. There I studied in a Jilla Parishad school up to 7th standard. And it was, that building had dilapidated, and actually some of the parts of that building collapsed in 1968 during Koina earthquake. So our classes used to be held in makeshift tents for almost 2-3 years till the building was ready. So that was my primary school, for which I had to walk about 2 kilometers one way, morning, evening. Then my secondary school from 8 to 11 standard was another 5 kilometers away, which was another 5 kilometers added walk. And then my college was at Chiplun, which is a taluka place, for which this walk up to the ST stand, ST stop, then the ST bus journey for 20 kilometers, and then walk from ST bus stand in Chiplun to the college at Chiplun, which was again 2-kilometer walk every day. But that college life was fun because it was like a homely place. Everybody knew everybody, all professors knew everybody by first name. And if you did something before you reached home, the report had reached home. Without telephones. There were no telephones also. So that was a very interesting phase. And I think all that I would say about that journey is that no matter what your background is, that should not deter anybody from dreaming of doing something.
That's correct. It's quite anyway, on that very inspiring note of coming from where you started and where you are today. And I think it's an inspiration for a lot of people in the profession to sort of follow. Thank you very much. Milind. It's been great to catch up with you also as a friend. We passed out in 1982, and here we are sitting in Hampshire trying to get through to your journey, although we've been crossing paths for the last 44 years here and there in the practice. But anyway.
I must conclude saying that I found our photo in a moot court group association in the Government Law College. And with the lawyers you mentioned about with whom I worked, I incidentally done one case with your father also.
So you've done some criminal law also.
Yes,
good.
yes.
That's good. Yeah. Then I know those were the days we had those moot court competitions in Government Law College in first, second and third year. We were all there. But anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you
It was
so
really
much. Thank
good
you.
to catch up with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.